Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to APP's Forest Conservation Policy one-year anniversary event. My name is Rhett Butler, and I am the moderator for today's proceedings. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am the founder of Mongabay.com, a popular environmental science and rainforest news website. I'm also the head of Mongabay.co.id, an Indonesian language environmental news service. I've covered APP very critically in the past, so I was really surprised when APP invited me to moderate this event. But given the role the private sector must play in efforts to slow deforestation and the magnitude of APP's recent commitments, I felt it was important and appropriate for me to participate. I'd like to thank everyone who has made the effort to be here today. We are joined by many people who care about forest conservation and associated issues, including your excellencies, representatives from government, and representatives from industry. Before we proceed, may I request that you put your mobile phone on silent mode? Thank you. On February 5th, 2013, APP announced its forest conservation policy, which put an immediate halt to any natural forest conversion in concessions controlled by it and its suppliers. The announcement was met with cautious optimism by a number of stakeholders, including some of APP's fiercest critics. Since then, there has been a noticeable change in how APP communicates and engages. It has seemingly become more transparent about its progress. For example, APP has self-reported a breach of its moratorium, set up stakeholder engagement processes, and granted journalists like me access to its plantations. To tell us more about APP's progress, please welcome Aida Greenbury, the Managing Director of Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement of Asia Pulp and Paper.
I'm sorry. First, I would like to apologize with what I wear today. I bought this really nice dress last week for this event, but somebody from the NGO community asked me to wear jeans to look a little bit more humble. So apologize, Pak Hadi, if I'm wearing something that is a little bit not appropriate. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today to mark the first anniversary of the Forest Conservation Policy. 12 months ago, our chairman, Mr. Teguh Gandawijaya, announced that APP, or Asia Pulp and Paper, was to embark on one of the world's most complex and ambitious forest conservation programs. The starting point was the immediate end to natural forest clearance in all our suppliers' concessions in Indonesia and a moratorium on further peatland development. So this is a proud moment for all of us at APP. There have been those who said that we wouldn't implement the policy or couldn't implement it. And to them I say that we are implementing it and we intend to succeed. Despite the many challenges over the course of the year, we have made tremendous progress towards implementing our forest conservation policy. Our natural forest moratorium is proving effective. Our biodiversity and forest assessments are on track, and we have introduced a number of measures to improve transparency. All of these cannot be achieved without the full support of the APP management, our suppliers, and the field staff. And in particular, I would like to emphasize the involvement of APP shareholder Linda Wijaya, who is with us today, the lady in yellow, who has helped tirelessly drive this significant change inside the company. Next, my two colleagues, Dewi, Deputy Director of Sustainability, and Ms. Elim, Director of Forest Conservation Policy Implementation, will shortly take you through our main achievements in more detail. And of course, there's still a great deal to do. For example, a few stakeholders have asked us about forest restoration, for example. And our position is clear. Forest restoration has been a key element in our high conservation value forest protection and planning. We are currently developing an ambitious landscape conservation strategy, and in addition, should the Forest Stewardship Council make any recommendations on forest restorations, we will also take them into account. We are delighted to have with us a distinguished panel chaired by Rhett Butler today, the founder and editor-in-chief of Mongabay. This will not be the first time that this group of people later on have debated the issues associated with implementing a zero deforestation policy in Indonesia. However, it will be the first time that we have had this debate in an open forum. The panel does not consist purely of APP supporters. We did not want this event today to be a standard one-sided press conference hoping to secure endorsements by NGOs or some government officials. Instead, we have invited our two biggest critics, Rainforest Action Network and WWF. We believe that by doing this, we will be able to shine a light on the many different views that exist among those who are working to achieve lasting forest conservation. And equally, it will also help people understand the complexity of the many issues that must be tackled. We will also open the floor to questions so that you too can take part in what we hope will be a lively debate today. Rhett has asked for questions from hundreds of thousands of Mongabay readers, which will help ensure that today's discussion is transparent and involves broad and global participation. Over the course of the last year, we have reached one overriding conclusion, that the goal of achieving zero deforestation in Indonesia is only possible if we all work together. We have proven that we are committed to playing our role in Indonesia's conservation efforts, but other business, government, and the NGO community must collaborate more closely to take real action to protect rainforest and peatlands in Indonesia. There are 4 areas that we believe must be addressed through cross-sector collaboration. One is the overlapping licenses. The issue of overlapping licenses needs to be resolved by all concerned parties if we are to develop a system for governing all concession holders in Indonesia. And number 2, community and land conflict issues. At times when the needs of communities are at odds with no deforestation policy, an agreed and consistent way of managing the negotiation process needs to be developed and implemented. And number 3, the landscape level conservation and management. Landscape level conservation is vital to the preservation of peatlands, the habitat of key species, and protection against forest fires. All of these can span several concession areas of differing commercial uses. Therefore, a cross-sector approach must be developed to manage entire landscape to ensure their long-term viability. And finally, market recognition. Policies that protect forests and peatland can only be economically viable if there is a market recognition for the business that invests resources in them. If we collaborate together on these issues, I believe we are far more likely to secure the future of Indonesia's rainforest. I will now pass over to my colleagues, Dewi and Elim, who will explain some of the challenges and opportunities that we have encountered over the course of the first year of our forest conservation policy. Thank you.
So with that, I'd like to invite Dewi, the Deputy Director for Sustainability for Asia Pulp and Paper, and Elam, the Director of Forest Conservation Implementation, to the stage to present the one-year report of the Forest Conservation Policy.
Good afternoon to our honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate your interest in APP's forest conservation policy. In this presentation, I will update you on the progress of its implementation 1 year after its launch. So let's review again the main components of APP's forest conservation policy. The first one is to ensure that our fiber supply does not come from deforestation or natural forest conversion in Indonesia. And we do this by undertaking high conservation value and high carbon stock assessment to identify those natural forest area and develop the management plan to protect them. The second one is to support the national target for low carbon emission industry to the protection and better management of peatland in the production forest concession area of our pulpwood supplier. The third commitment is to ensure that the rights of local and indigenous community living in and around our the plantation forest concession area of pulpwood supplier are respected. which include the adoption of free, prior, and informed consent. The fourth is focusing on other sources of APP's fiber, which include market fiber from regions such as Asia Pacific, Europe, North and South America. We want to make sure that these sources also come from sustainably managed forests. Finally, we believe that FCP can only be properly implemented with the support of our stakeholders from various groups such as NGOs, our own customers, the suppliers itself, and the governments. Therefore, transparent and constructive engagement with these stakeholders are crucial for our success. We launched FCP on the 5th of February 2013 on the second quarterly progress update of our Sustainability Roadmap initiative. With this policy, APP has accelerated its goal to eliminate deforestation from its pulpwood supply chain by 2 years from 2015. Our pulpwood suppliers agreed to include 38 of their production forest concession areas into our moratorium. The launch of FCP has been over a year in the making. APP has been laying the groundwork to carry it out with the support of TFT. This included assessing our suppliers' readiness, engaging them to be on board with our policy, and developing the initial procedures for the implementation of the moratorium. Some of the highlights are as follows. In line with our commitment for transparency, on June 4, 2014, APP launched our own land dashboard that provides profiles of our pulpwood suppliers and also progress status on the various FCP-related activity. On the social side of FCP implementation, in July 2013, the Forest Management Team has successfully completed one of its pilot social conflict resolution program in Senyarang area, which is located in Jambi Province, Sumatra. It is an important achievement which provided our Forest Management Team with the opportunity to learn and improve on their engagement with the communities in conflict situation. The Senyarang community conflict has been highlighted by our NGO stakeholders as a key concern for them, so we listened and we made it into a priority. Another key concern for NGO stakeholder is the deadline for the delivery of natural forest wood that was cut prior to the 1st of February 2013. They are worried that there is risk of leakage from natural forest area outside of our 38 suppliers. Again, we listened to their concern and have accelerated our delivery deadline from the 31st of December 2013 to the 31st August of 2013. So no more natural forest wood has been entering our pulp mill since that date. Related to our commitment to transparency, APP has agreed to have an independent third party to evaluate our implementation of FCP. On the 30th of January, we are pleased to confirm that we have engaged Rainforest Alliance to undertake this evaluation. There are two goals of FCP at the end. The first one is to eliminate deforestation from our supply chain, and the second one is to ensure that all of APP's pulpwood are from sustainably managed forests in line with the highest of standard and by implementing the best practice. There are elements that we need to help us manage our pulpwood supply chain more sustainably. They are the high conservation value study, the high carbon stock assessment, and then best practices in managing social issues, and of course, recommendation on best practice in peatland management. Last but not least is also to ensure that APP continues to have the capability to grow its business in the future while maintaining its environmental and social commitments. And that would depend on the productivity of our plantation forest suppliers and its improvement, which we are assessing through a growth and yield study. All of this various information will be incorporated together into an integrated sustainable forest management plan, which will improve our suppliers' processes and systems in managing their production forest concession area. For the high conservation value study, APP has engaged 2 independent organizations to study our 38 suppliers' concession production area. APCS has been assessing 11 of our suppliers' concessions, which take up about 1.1 million hectare, or 40% of the total land bank that is supporting APP's pulp mills. The field assessment has been completed middle of last year. The draft reports have been developed, and APCS have already carried out a public consultation, and currently the drafts are undergoing peer review process before they are actually being finalized. APCS has informed APP that the final reports are targeted to be completed by the end of this month, The remaining 60% of our suppliers, which comprises 27 concessions, are also undergoing high conservation value assessment by Ekologika Consulting. Currently, in East and West Kalimantan, 100% of the draft report has been completed. For Sumatra, about 84%, while for the Ria region, only 42%. As you can see, Jambi province is not here because it's been assessed all by APCS. Ekologika has informed us that they have targeted the completion of the HCV reports by June of 2014. So the next step for them is to have a public consultation, which will be also followed by peer review before it's being finalized. For high carbon stock assessment, in June 2013, TFT has completed the initial stratification to identify areas with forest cover from scrublands and open or denuded lands using satellite images. This initial stratification was verified by ground checking to validate the desktop work. The result of phase 1 work was reviewed by expert. Due to the quality of the satellite data available because of presence of cloud cover, the team has discovered that they would require more field data to achieve the accuracy level that is required to help us identify natural forest areas from other types. Therefore, additional field work is currently undertaken, and the HCS study is now targeted to be completed by June 2014. Due to the large land area, over 2.6 million hectares that has to be covered, TFT also involved Atamari Consulting Company in the second stage of the high carbon study. The next step for the high carbon stock study is to finalize the report, have experts to review the second stage study result, and then consulting it with the key NGOs. For the activities related to social aspect of forest FCP, APP with the support of TFT has developed new procedures and protocols for conflict resolution and free prior informed consent implementation. Training of the new protocols for over 400 of staff and managers of APP suppliers have been done by TFT. 3 pilot projects to implement new procedures and protocols for conflict resolution has also been undertaken in 3 provinces. And I have mentioned earlier one of the key achievements. With regards to free and prior informed consent work, with the help of TFT, APP has started a pilot project to implement it in our new pulp mill located in South Sumatra. We are also implementing another pilot project for a new plantation development in our pulpwood suppliers area, which is also located in South Sumatra. As part of our effort in improving our communication with our stakeholders, APP carried out focus group discussion, or FGDs, on national and regional levels. Some FGDs are focused on seeking input of our procedures and protocols, and also on general FCP implementation issues and challenges. While other FGDs, usually at regional levels, are focused on specific issues that require input from and coordination with local stakeholders, such as the local community, local NGO, and local authorities. The next element APP is working on is in the implementation of best practice peat land management. For that, we need the support of peat expert team. We have been looking for a team with international credential, with a good mix of academic knowledge and industrial experience to guide us in the development of peat management and monitoring plan, which will be integrated into our suppliers' forest management plan. We are pleased to announce that we have recently engaged the peat expert teams, which is led by the Wageningen University from the Netherlands. The team has started work with APP early in January of this year. To help to explain the process of integrated sustainable forest management plan development, I would like to invite my colleague Elim to present.
Integrated Sustainable Forest Management Plan Development Process. This is the team structure that have been formed. I'd like to highlight that we have involved internal and external stakeholders. We have engaged with the expert from conservation and also peat expert. We also have engaged from Ekologika as a coordinator to help us to communicate with the all technical experts that we have already engaged. We also facilitate the stakeholder consultation for each forest management unit in the regional and the national level. The progress update of the Integrated Sustainable Forest Management Plan development is as follows. We have completed the guideline for the development of the management plan to ensure that all suppliers will follow the same rules and principles in our FCP, balancing and integrating the management of production, social and environmental aspects. We have undertaken workshops for all the FMU level to help them to understand this guideline. We have chosen Jambi region as a pilot to start the development of this integrated sustainable forest management plan. Why we choose Jambi? Because of Jambi is an important landscape for many of our stakeholders. Currently, we are in the process of data analysis while waiting for the assessment report to be finalized. I will explain development process flow for the integrated sustainable forest management plan. We will analyze the recommendation from all studies to make a balanced approach between environment, social, and production aspects using landscape approach by developing a project hierarchy plan. And we will also do spatial and non-spatial data analysis to ensure that all plans are aligned and there are no conflicting interests to find options for alternative scenarios. We will then communicate with key stakeholders the most acceptable land planning scenario chosen. And then landscape level guideline development will be used as a guideline for each of the forest management units to develop their management plan and standard operating procedure improvement. So that this is the summary of integrated sustainable forest management plan process. Then I'm giving back to Dewi to continue the presentation. Thank you.
With regards to transparency, APP has developed a public dashboard system using the TFT Sure technology. The dashboard allowed our interested stakeholders to gain access to many details of and progress of our FCP implementation. The system was introduced into public in June of 2013. After the launch of version 1, we set out to gain feedback from our stakeholders on the system, whether it is easy to navigate and find relevant information, and whether there are additional FCP-related elements that they would want APP to display through the dashboard system. In February 2014, on our FCP anniversary, we are also launching version 2, which we hope will further improve our communication and engagement effort. In October of 2013, Greenpeace released a public report that assessed APP's implementation of FCP. We are pleased that Greenpeace recognized the commitment of our senior management in FCP, that there is good progress on the ground, that APP's promise on transparency is genuine, as demonstrated by our self-disclosure on a breach by some of our suppliers. It is a balanced appraisal of our progress, which also acknowledges that there are room for improvements for APP and that the return on customers should require continued oversight of FCP delivery. It also acknowledged challenges that APP will encounter ahead and provided APP with useful recommendations. Other highlights that we would like to report in our first anniversary is the engagement of an independent third-party verification on the implementation of FCP. As I mentioned before, Rainforest Alliance, a well-respected assessment organization in the forestry industry, has agreed to undertake an arm's-length independent assessment on the implementation of our commitment as laid out in FCP. We hope this will provide additional assurance for our stakeholders that we take our commitment seriously. We are also pleased to announce a very encouraging development with FSC, where the board of FSC has welcomed FCP and has expressed interest in following APP's process of achieving our goals and also our compliance to FSC's policy of association. APP is seeking reassociation and is currently in early dialogue with FSC on the steps forward. Another key activity that we are undertaking is to assess and improve the productivity of our suppliers' plantation through a growth and yield study to ensure that our pulp mills will have a sustainable source of plantation trees for its production. TFT and Atamari Consulting also worked together on this project starting last year. They have completed their field assessment and is currently finalizing the report, which is targeted to be completed by the end of this month. A lot of the focus on the first year of FCP implementation is on APP's Indonesia operation. This is not to say that we have not rolled out FCP in our China operation. Due to the different conditions, that, for example, that there are no natural forest issues in the wood suppliers in China, and the different types and structure of suppliers for China operations, for example, they use more imported wood from all over the world, the focus has been on mapping the suppliers against our responsible fiber purchasing and processing policy, and also the forest conservation policy. The objective is to assess risk and develop plans to address them. Another focus in China is on social management. As our pulpwood suppliers, there consist of hundreds of individual and group landowners from the community, which is unique to China. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. I hope it has given you a better understanding of our FCP implementation progress so far. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dewi and Elam. So we're moving into the debate section of the day. APP's forest conservation policy is ambitious and unprecedented in this sector, while its past track record remains highly controversial. Accordingly, there are many outstanding and contentious issues. Further, there are very rarely universal agreement on how things should be done. So the purpose of today's debate is to discuss these issues and try to understand the challenges for APP and various stakeholders as the FCP moves forward. This is a forum for debate, so please feel free to speak your mind and don't be afraid to ask questions. The general structure of this forum is an hour of discussion between the panelists. I'll then open it up to questions from the floor and social media. Note that we've already received, or I've received more than 100 questions via email, Twitter, and Facebook. So it's clear people are very passionate and engaged on what will be discussed here today. So without further ado, I would like to welcome each of today's panelists up to the stage. So first is Scott Poynton, the Executive Director of the Forest Trust. Next is Bustar Maitar, Head of Greenpeace's Indonesia Forest Campaign. Next is Neville Kemp of Ekologika, one of APP's HCV assessors. Next is Dido, sorry if I get your last name wrong, but Bayunanda, coordinator for the Global Forest and Trade Network for WWF-Indonesia. Followed by Lafcadio Cortesi, Forest Campaign Director of the Rainforest Action Network. And finally, Aida Greenbury, the Managing Director of Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement for APP. So to start, the FCP began with the suspension of Greenpeace's very high-profile campaign against APP. Since then, Greenpeace has been working closely with APP on implementation. So as such, I'd like to begin by asking Bustar to give his view on how the first year of working with APP has gone.
Thank you, Rhett. Pertama, yang terhormat Pak Hadi Daryanto, Sekretaris Jenderal Kementerian Kehutanan, His Excellency Ambassador of UK and Norway. Yeah. So, yes, it's 1 year of the Greenpeace suspension of the APP campaign. I believe most of you also still remember how we did the campaign. I think the first time also I met Aida when, I think about 2.5 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago. Myself and my team is, blocking all of the gate of APP and then, hanging the banner, really encouraging APP. It's not saying taking APP, but encouraging APP to do something right, to stop deforestation, do something right to respect the social and the community right on the ground. That time, for us in Greenpeace and the majority of our teams, still thinking like this is something impossible. I mean, encouraging the big company like APP. But, we keep trying and it's happened. It's happened. In the country like Indonesia, and especially from the born and and grow up, it's not easy. It's not easy to encourage the company like APP to doing something right. But we're surprised that finally Linda come to us, we talking, we discuss, and we see some, some willingness to start doing things right. And this is something is not in Greenpeace culture, talking with the company and helping the company to implementing their policy. But in the case of Indonesia, we feel like we should be on the ground and helping the company to make this happen. And I would like to telling you also, in this forest conservation policy, there is no any single paper signed between Greenpeace and APP. Whatever trip we are doing to monitor what is going on the ground is paid by us, by Greenpeace, not APP. So the report that we released a couple of months ago is really coming from the independent monitoring of Greenpeace, how we see on the ground. Yes, there is a lot of change, a lot of challenge. Pak Hadi is here. I just meeting Pak Hadi a couple of weeks ago. We discussed about the overlapping concession between the palm oil, coal mining, and pulp and paper. And seems like no one is taking care of this. But here, I think we need to work together how to make this happen to protect our forest. So even that there is a lot of challenge, this year is election year, but with the commitment from APP, we still believe, we still confident this commitment will deliver. And for Greenpeace, it's nothing to lose. If in the end APP is making something wrong, and we will criticize again. So we will doing something, something balanced here. But again, myself and my team is confident that APP will deliver this forest conservation policy.
So to follow up on that, one of the most common questions on social media, I would say probably asked more than 20 times, is why should we believe APP is serious this time when it's missed previous self-imposed deadlines for essentially phasing deforestation out of its supply chain? And so this question, I'd like to start with you, but I'd like all panel members, including APP for that matter, to respond.
I think why it's different, because when we meet first time between Greenpeace and APP, I think because Linda Wijaya is there. So I put some, this is really something really different. See someone who's coming, if allow me to mention, coming from the family to attend the meeting with the NGO who, criticized them for many years and coming, sit down, talking. I think this is something different. And secondly, also, doing the meeting day by day, see Aida, Linda, Pak Apiao, and Pak Robin, the whole senior level management of APP is always there. So we see some really big change in terms of the how to communicate and to receive input from stakeholder. So that is first. And secondly, of course, also that there is no way to escape from the sustainability and the demand from the market. If the product from the company would like to still stay in the international market. Again, I would like to mention again this discussion with Pak Hadi a couple of weeks ago. Many people saying Greenpeace is still doing a black campaign, and Pak Hadi itself telling me, no, what you're doing is to helping us to create the product which is will respected in the international market, and this is the way to go to protect, the Indonesian interest, but in the same time protect the Indonesian forest and the community here in Indonesia.
So, Aida, why is it different this time in your perspective?
I think Bustar already answered everything. The strong commitment from the top shareholders, top management, everybody in the staff, the field staff, Elim, our director for FCP implementation, has seen how our people in the field are just trying very hard to educate our staff and really try to implement it. Yeah.
Lafcadio, you've been in this business for a long time. What are your thoughts here?
I just want to really, I mean, one of the things that I see that's very different is I really want to congratulate APP on engaging Rainforest Alliance for independent verification. And I think one of the real differences between past commitments and this one is that we're going to try to measure it. And this independent verification is a critical tool. I think it's going to be absolutely imperative that it remains independent and that its scope maybe gets broadened a little bit. So I'm hoping to hear some continued commitments so that we can indicate we can verify it. But I think that independent verification is one signal that this is moving along the right track.
Dido, do you have a perspective?
Thank you. I think our position is that we are skeptical of the commitments, and that is why our call is that we need to see your commitments and in that context be verified, independently verified. So as I think Laf mentioned about the Rainforest Alliance verification, I think it's a good step towards that, because you have to understand that APP has that history of making promises and breaking them. So this is, I think, one way to convince stakeholders like WWF, who has been there in Rio for 10 years in that context, looking at all of the problems that the company has created and the deforestation. So I think it's fair for us that we would need that assurance, that independent assurance before we can say otherwise.
Scott, do you have a perspective on this?
Yeah, I'd echo what Bustar said. TFT's been going for 15 years now, and we work around the world. We interact with hundreds, if not thousands, of companies. So we have a strong sense of watching companies go through a change journey. And we've seen companies make commitments and fail in those commitments, where clearly they weren't serious. I started talking to APP in January 2011, so I had a long journey with them up until February 2013 when the commitment was made. And I would say, possibly the unique perspective of sitting inside the room with the senior management team led by Linda, with Puck Robin and Aida and the team, to see them deal with issues in a very, very serious way. And I think one of the key things was that APP said to themselves, we're not going to make any commitments that we can't deliver. So let's understand what the commitment means before we make it. So we worked through all of the issues that were being raised by the various NGOs and the communities, and we road tested them. And the TFT field staff went out into the field with the APP field staff, and we looked at things and we said, can we do that? And we tested it and we thought about it, we talked to communities, we talked to NGOs, and we found that we could. And so the commitments were made with that knowledge behind them, that they could be implemented, and with the senior stakeholder group, as Bustar mentioned, right behind them. So I would say the policy came out, we were very pleased, but the proof is in the pudding, as we say, and the real, I think the demonstration is that since the policy came out, there has been no backtracking at all by the company. There's been some issues out in the field, but I would say minor ones. There's been accusations of APP dropping its commitment, but we found that those accusations have actually been involving overlapping concessions, not being done by APP. So I think there are things said that are proven to be not the company, and I just say my sense is the company is 100% committed on implementing the policy. It's put a huge team involved, making the resources available for our team to work. I'm 100% convinced that they're definitely committed, and this is going to be a success story for years to come.
Nev, do you have a perspective on this?
Yeah, thanks, Rhett. I look from the perspective of HCV. Ekologika is doing HCV for 27 of the supplier concessions, and the implementation of HCV is a global standard, which involves a transparent and public consultation process. Through the HCV, we've been talking to hundreds of thousands of stakeholders and getting their recommendations and input to how to actually manage HCVs. I think that's a very bold step and really opening the door to transparency. And so, yeah, that's almost verifying from our point of view with the data we're finding, and having public consultations, talking to local stakeholders, local NGOs who are often very critical is an important part of the process. And I think it's a new process for APP and from the suppliers. So hopefully this time is going to be different. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to direct a couple questions to the two major critics of APP up here, so Rainforest Action Network and WWF. And those questions would be, what is your view on APP's progress during the past year on the forest conservation policy? And what do you view as the single biggest shortcoming or gap in the policy as it now stands?
I think we are cautiously looking. I think there has been some discrepancies. There's been some cutting that is done, and we're still cautious. We're still cautious of this. One thing that we do see as a gap in this is that the FCP is about deforestation, about stopping the deforestation. It is still not addressing, while I hear Aida saying some positive things about the restoration and conservation, but in the FCP itself, addressing that legacy of deforestation, where you have done over the decades 2.6 million hectares of natural forest, is somewhere that is still missing in the FCP. And I think that needs to be well addressed. Your statements needs to be clarified, and what does that actually mean? And see whether that is significant, so that your legacy of deforestation can be addressed, so that APP becomes a truly responsible player in the global market. So that's basically where we see that the main gap are still there.
And I think we support that. I think that we need to get more clear on what the commitment to restoration looks like, and get APP to really put that out there. The other kind of, we're still wondering if there is a commitment. I heard it from Dewi earlier, that the goal is to not use any natural forest fiber, so have 100% plantation fiber, and I think that we just want to make sure that remains the goal, and in fact is the goal, and there's no kind of natural forest fiber going into the supply chain, tropical forest fiber. Also, I think there's another important challenge for the company, and challenge for us all, really, we'll have to work together on this, is regarding the peat commitment, because I think that there's a real need for APP to go beyond, to have peat protection, and I saw that peat protection was up there, but as we've discussed before, we're really encouraging APP to not only protect forested peat, but also look at the areas that have been recently cleared in particular, and see about restoring that peat, because and that goes hand in hand with a need to really measure APP's current emissions, and be able to get a baseline so the company can actually set emissions targets. We don't have any emissions targets. There's no specificity around the commitments. And so those are a couple areas that I think we could call gaps or shortcomings.
So Aida, do you have response to either the restoration issue and also the potential emissions targets that Lafcadio mentioned?
No, just kidding. Sure. Let's start with the restoration. I said earlier that restoration has been a very key element in our FCP. Our forest conservation policy is just a set of principles. We cannot really outline everything one by one. Our commitment to high conservation value forest is, correct me if I'm wrong, Nev, but clearly outlines restoration initiatives once it's already completed. So once HCV assessment is completed, we're going to have a look at which area that we need to concentrate on protection and enhancement of the value itself. So it's not only just identification, but it's also enhancement. And also we need to prioritize which area that we need to prioritize and using the landscape approach as well. So restoration has been in the picture. It's never been off the table. Right now we're still assessing of where and when. And it's also part of our discussions with FSC in the compliance of the policy for associations to address the previous deforestations. So that's also already on the table. Regarding 100 plantation fiber, yes, it's always our goal. I mean, our pulp mills machines, they're designed to process plantation fiber. We don't really want to use natural forest fiber in our pulp mills operations. But again, what we're trying to do right now is stopping deforestation and taking care of what natural forests left behind, protect it and manage it and enhance the values. What we can say to our customers is we can assure you that our products will not contain any fiber which is linked to any deforestation activities. Regarding peat commitment, I totally agree with you, Laf. It is true that we need to establish a baseline, and it is part of the conversations that I've had with the peat experts. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, so we have to adopt what is the baseline for current emissions created from forestry industry. It has been established, and we're going to have a look at it. And with the peat experts from Wageningen University, we're going to come up with a proper mapping of how much area in our operations are actually covered by peat, using the baseline, how much emissions. And the most important thing is basically to identify what is the best practice that can be implemented to support responsible peatland management. Because there's no such thing until now. We have best practice on forest management, but there's no specifically on peatland management itself. Regarding restorations, of course, we have to wait until the assessment by our peat experts and HCVs are completed, and then we're gonna go from there. Yes, so that's basically our plan, that we're going to establish the baseline for emissions with our peat experts and try to adopt best practice, and we can measure how much greenhouse gas emissions that we can actually reduce by implementing the best practice in plantation management. But do not forget, for forested peatland, we are already committed to fully protect it.
So to follow up on that point, Wetlands International asked whether it's possible to use methods that require less drainage of peatlands, and also whether there's any possibility of producing fiber on non-drained peatlands generally.
Yeah, perhaps Nev can help a little bit on that, but that's also a part of our works that we're going to do with the peat experts. We are also doing some kind of programs to identify alternative species, and they're going to have a look at the alternative species that we have been researching on, and probably try this species if it's suitable for pulpwood plantation, of course, and the pulp mill need. And regarding undrained, we discussed this initially with the experts last week. We believe that some kind of control is still required in order for the plantation to be sustainable and economically viable.
I can explain what we're doing in the field at the moment. We've got peat teams out in the field to verify secondary data. We're doing a 1% sampling of the smaller concessions. For the larger concessions, we're doing a lesser sampling rate, and just to verify how much peat is there, how deep it is, what the water table is like at the moment. And that information is going to be passed to the peat experts. I'm not a peat expert, so I can't really comment on whether fibre can be produced from undrained peatlands. But in general, improved peat management includes, it involves water table management. Just to add to the restoration question earlier, restoration is always one of the recommendations, and Ekologika is trying to identify the priority areas which should be restored and which need to be conserved. There's a lot of encroachment going on at the moment in all concessions. A lot of illegal logging as well. We come across this, and to restore the areas which are vital for maintenance and enhancement of HCV are our priority in the first. I can't really answer about the legacy from APP, but the first priority is to maintain and enhance HCVs which we're identifying in the supply concessions.
I wanted to ask RAN and WWF whether, in your view, APP's approach for determining HCV and HCS is sufficient.
Well, I'd actually like to I can't comment on HCS, and on HCV, we can't say yet because we haven't seen the copies of the HCV report. So we're looking for, we're had an agreement that we would be able to see those. They've been delayed, and I just, I think that transparency at that level will be important, and we haven't seen it yet. So that's one kind of challenge. I also just wanted to ask, a follow-up question on the peat, which is, does the terms of reference for, I think sharing the terms of reference, or I guess I'd just ask, does the terms of reference for the peat group include identification of areas to be protected, and does it include actual measurement of APP's carbon footprint from land use?
Does it include carbon footprint? Yes, it will. It's part of the baseline. What was the second question?
I think that one of the challenges we're finding in terms of working with the company to through kind of criticism help to find solutions, and also through collaboration find solutions, but is the ability to have access to information, such as the terms of reference for the independent verification, the terms of reference for the peat working group. We'd like to be able to give some inputs on those, and so we're looking forward to working on those together.
Yeah, sure.
So this is just a general question that's come up a few times. Does APP know, or its partners know, how much forest will be conserved as a result of the SCP yet? And there's a question about the fate of the high conservation value or high carbon stock forest within the concessions in Kalimantan.
Excuse me, the high carbon stock assessments are designed to use satellite photos and ground checking to verify what forest is left out there. So that work is ongoing. As Dewi mentioned, the first phase of that gathered a lot of data, a lot of measurements, but we needed more data. So that's happening, and the aim is to have that done by June. And when we've got those maps, it'll produce a set of maps that'll highlight what areas of forest are there. This work has been done on the ground before with Golden Agri Resources, the palm oil company, sister company of APP. It's been peer reviewed by globally respected scientists, including Indonesian scientists, so we're very confident in the robustness of the method. So that work's ongoing. Once that's done, we'll have a very clear picture of how much forest is left. In terms of the conservation, subsequent conservation, I think Nev just mentioned quickly in his comment there that there is illegal logging happening out there. It's going to be one thing for the company to set these areas aside, it's another thing to manage them in perpetuity as forests. So there's a lot of encroachment, and this is where I think, coming back to Aida's initial comment when she made her presentation, was this is something where people need to work together. We have to work with the communities, we have to work with local civil society, international civil society, to see what we can do to bring strong protection into those forest areas. But the key is going to be working with the people that live out there to look after those forests. So it's not certain, but I think the intention of the company is clear to protect those areas.
So it's been touched on here a bit just now. encroachment is a huge issue in Indonesia, and it's a big issue for APP. So this is actually a question that came from a group of NGOs in Riau, where there's a lot of deforestation, and APP has a lot of operations. And so the question is, what is the responsibility of APP and Sinarmas Group to the GSK Biosphere Reserve, which is currently widely encroached by illegal loggers? And I guess taking that question a little bit, looking at that question a little bit more broadly, what is APP's role generally in supporting conservation areas, even when they're outside their direct control? So I would just open that question up to the panel.
Our role is basically we need to make sure that the conservation area inside our concessions or our suppliers' concessions still stays intact. If there is any encroachment by the local community, we need to be able to engage them, try to educate them, try to stop their action, but our action is also very limited. We can report it to the authority, but that's about it. We have no rights to arrest them or relocate them or something like that. So that's one thing that we've been doing in our concessions. And secondly, what I touched before with the landscape approach, that's something that we also are planning to do. We need to design some kind of a plan or management plan to manage our concessions based on the landscape approach. But again, landscape approach level requires collaborations, much wider collaborations from the relevant stakeholders, including the concession holders next to our concessions, and also the local government and also the central government to help support that.
Yeah, the way that encroachment or illegal logging is moving is that they use infrastructure that is built by companies. APP has several corridors. I think one that I'm most familiar is the corridor south of the Bukit 30 National Park, where that corridor is under control of APP, but is basically used indiscriminately by encroachers to encroach, to build palm oil and things on forest areas. I think this also falls, I think, within the regulations. Building these kinds of corridors throughout the forest estates has its consequences, and one of the responsibility of the company, which at this point was APP on that particular corridor road, was to ensure that that kind of traffic or that kind of use is not being used for that encroachment or illegal activities. So I think there is a major role for APP in the context of protecting landscapes and protecting areas outside of their concessions, which are directly or indirectly affected by their development, by the infrastructure that they have built. So I think the answer to that question, I think yes, there is a big role, and I think that responsibility somehow must be picked up if you want to say that you want to do the conservation at a landscape base.
I think this is a really important and critical issue, and it's touching on fundamental rights of people as well. And I think one of the things that our work on HCS, the high carbon stock work, and HCV and peatland has done is open an opportunity to explore an issue that is not very well explored, I think, in Indonesia or anywhere else. And that is the conflict, in a way, between possible conflict, not guaranteed conflict, but possible conflict between the customary rights of local and indigenous communities to the land that they consider their own and the objective of forest conservation. Because what we see as illegal logging may be 100% genuine illegal logging done by illegal loggers, but it could also be logging done by communities clearing land to develop a palm oil plantation on land that they consider to be their customary rights. So one of the, I think, the challenges that we have to, I think it's always been a problem, but we've really touched on it now. We've put our finger on this challenge as we've tried to look at how we can conserve this forest, is that there is a conflict between, there could be a conflict between a situation where a community would like to clear a forest that we consider HCS or HCV, and that's their customary right to do so, and the company's policy that says, actually, you can't do that because it's in our concession and we want it protected. So I think APP is starting to grapple with a number of these issues, and I think the company is grappling with them in a very positive way, a very open-minded way. It's trying to work with communities to discuss these things, but it's not easy. And again, we come back to this notion and need to work collaboratively with communities, with local civil society to try and find solutions to these situations. But I think it's an opportunity, because if we don't resolve it and we don't work through it, we're never going to get anywhere and these forests will disappear. So we have an opportunity here. And the last I would say about the illegal logging is, I think Dido is correct about the corridors, but I think we have to also we have to really look at ourselves and say, encroachment's happening everywhere in Indonesia. Illegal logging is happening everywhere in Indonesia, and that includes places like Tesonilo National Park, and not just roads where APP is made. So I think we've all got to, this is a great opportunity to actually work on these issues collaboratively and say, okay, this is happening in Tesonilo, it's happening in this national park. Yes, it's happening on APP concessions as well. So rather than sort of saying APP is evil, let's look at how we can work and solve these problems in a deeper way. So I think this is a critical thing. It's an opportunity. Let's look at this as an opportunity to deal with some key issues.
Nev, I wanted to follow up on something Scott said there. It's actually a question that the Forest Peoples Program asked, and that is, how will these proposals to set aside these lands as for high carbon stocks accommodate the rights and livelihoods of local communities and indigenous people? And so I guess more broadly, is it... Oh, sorry. So this is a question from FPP that's exactly what we were talking about, and that is, how will proposals to set aside these HCS areas accommodate the rights and livelihoods of local communities and indigenous people?
I can best comment on high conservation values. Through the high conservation value, there's obviously high conservation value number 5 and 6, which looks at the basic needs of local communities, not just ADAC communities, but all communities, and the cultural identity that natural resources, which Scott touched on earlier, that local communities have an identity with and regard as their traditional lands. Through our assessment, we try to define the difference between basic needs, where forests provide fiber, food, water, and other services which are vital for a community's basic needs, and try to differentiate where values are just the area of land which communities wish to convert into oil palm. We're dealing with a case at the moment which is really testing us and pushing us outside our normal comfort zone with HCV, and that's a good thing for Indonesia, because we need to tackle this. And I wholeheartedly support Scott's comments. It's not easy. Earlier there's a question about, is HCS and HCV enough? And the answer is, it's never enough. We're in the field for a limited amount of time, a lot of time, but a limited amount of time. And the management and monitoring is pushing us more and more towards a multi-stakeholder approach, where it's not just one organization setting recommendations, but a number of stakeholders within in the landscapes where APP is working to identify the problems and manage and monitor them in a cooperative way. So does HCS, HCV impinge on the rights? I would hope that they are synchronous and they can work together, the two approaches. HCV certainly should not. A lot of the HCV and HCS areas are obviously going to be the same, but we are really trying to identify what the basic needs of these communities are and differentiate between claims which are aimed at expansion and development of oil palm for not basic needs. But again, we are not the only voice in the HCV process. It's an open and transparent process where we have stakeholder consultations. The various cases which we've got at the moment, we haven't taken to stakeholder consultation yet because we haven't finalized the report. But these points are going to be raised. They're difficult to answer, difficult to resolve, but I hope with a collaborative and multi-stakeholder approach, it will be easier and clearer to be managed in the future. And you know, HCV, is it enough? No, it's never enough, and that's why you have monitoring recommendations, and it's not just APP that should be monitoring. I really firmly believe that there's a place for universities, for local NGOs, international NGOs, to help with the monitoring process, and to get familiar with these complex issues which are happening throughout Indonesia.
So to follow up on that, there are two questions, one from Forest Peoples Program and one from the Riau NGOs. I'll start with APP on this. So, you know, APP concessions have often overlapped these lands claimed by communities. And so, first of all, what's the process for airing complaints, resolving disputes and compensation? And then the other question is will APP restitute lands to communities who lost their land, whose lands were taken without their consent, either due to APP or the government? And if so, what tenures will give them security over those lands in the future once they're returned? And will unencumbered land, title to land that's held by the previous inhabitants, so a dot situation, will those rights be restored? So I think I'll start with you, Aida.
Yeah, so let me just get my... We are committed to EPIC, yeah, free and prior informed consent, but the implementation of EPIC itself, we split into two. We implement free and prior informed consent for a new development area. And for the existing areas, we're implementing social conflict resolution procedure. You touch on the compensation side. We will not alienate compensation as one of the possible solution, but what we're trying to do right now is, I think we already finalized the social conflict mapping, where we identify each issues, identifies what type of the issues, identify what stakeholders involved, and prioritize which conflicts that we need to address first. We have successfully done this in Jambi province, in Senyarang area, and we also will try to resolve in other priority areas as well in Sumatra. So if you ask me, is compensation is on the table? Possibly, because we have to follow through the social conflict procedures properly, and it could be one of the solutions identified. And then regarding land tenure, I think regarding land tenure and customary rights is really in the hands of the government. It's not really in our hands. We can only operate based on the license given to us, and other than that, maybe you can ask government officials attending this talk later, maybe.
Yeah, so we do have some government officials in the audience, and if they would be interested in speaking to this issue, there's a couple of issues that we'd love to hear your thoughts on. So, how would you?
Maybe I can translate for you. Pak Hadi bisa mohon minta inputnya. Jadi tadi Pak Rhett membicarakan tentang bagaimana kalau ada konflik di dalam konsesi mengenai dengan komunitas, dengan community. Dari APP kita sudah mempunyai suatu prosedur dalam conflict resolution, tetapi kalau gitu prosedurnya sudah kita selesaikan, apa garansi bahwa mereka mempunyai land tenure terhadap area yang sudah mereka klaim atau sudah menjadi bagian dari resolusi tersebut? Saya bilang itu adalah sesuatu yang menjadi tanggung jawab berada di tangan pemerintah, bukan pada pihak swasta.
Terima kasih Ibu Aida, Kepala sekalian. Jadi untuk penyelesaian teritorial ini ada beberapa solusi. Yang pertama, pemerintah menganggap kalau masyarakat asli setempat berada dalam kawasan kita, maka dia adalah tujuan kita berlakukan enklas. Kita enklas sehingga mereka bisa punya tenur yang kuat. Yang kedua, bila di dalam kawasan hutan ada pengelola seperti ada APP, ada program izin, maka solusinya kita lakukan kemitraan. Ini sudah ada peraturan menteri kehutanannya. Yang ketiga, bila di dalam kawasan hutan belum ada pengelolanya, maka masyarakat setempat kita kasih tembok yang namanya hutan tanaman rakyat sebagai pemegang izin. Atau kalau mereka berkelompok, kita memberikan izin hutan kemasyarakatan. Atau kalau mereka merupakan satu komite dan ada kelembagaan adat, sepanjang belum ada perda sebagai keputusan MK 45, maka kita berikan semacam pengelolaan yaitu Indonesia. Kelima, dalam hal sudah ada fasilitas masuk, fasilitas umum, ya, publik, dan kemudian kita lihat di dalam memecahkan resolusi itu tidak mungkin lagi dikeluarkan dari kawasan hutan, maka kita melakukan revisi tata ruang. Itu salah satunya. Lalu dalam hal ada hutan atau masyarakat di luar kawasan, tetapi di sekitarnya ada konsesi-konsesi area, ini juga bisa dalam pola hutan rakyat kemitraan, pola hutan pembangunan rakyat kemitraan. Selain tadi dengan konsesi, itu namanya pengelolaan hutan bersama masyarakat. Ini cara-cara kita menyelesaikan konflik teritorial di kawasan hutan. Begitulah langkah pemerintah, dan kita berharap dengan penyelesaian konflik teritorial akan ada kepastian hukum baik bagi masyarakat maupun pelaku usaha dan pemerintah, sehingga tujuan untuk mencapai sustainable forest kan bisa dicapai.
Guess I've become the translator now. No, it's all right, Pak Hadi. That's right. So there are several solutions. Pak Hadi said that there are several solutions for territorial conflicts. Number one, basically to enclave the area that the indigenous community has claimed, and will give them the guarantee for the tenure. Secondly, to develop a partnership program with the license holders. And then thirdly, if this community is operating on unmanaged forest, then the government provide them the rights to manage the area as community forests. And other solution is basically to revise the special planning policy to suit the need for the community.
So I was curious in asking the other panel members here about these community issues as far as overlapping claims are concerned. Do Greenpeace or RAND have thoughts on that? Just resolving those issues?
Yeah, I think I'm glad that Pak Hadi give some thought on to us about these things, because I think in this conversation since the beginning, seems like it's only about APP, community, and forest. Seems like no government is regulate this in this all area, which is, from my perspective, government playing a very key roles here. Not only Ministry of Forestry, not only national government, but what is most important thing is the local government. I mean, in the Kabupatens level, this is something that we've been facing a lot of challenge, especially after reformation, after autonomy, that with the power that Bupati have, for example, that something need to seems like something need to be fixed there. But what is good here, company is already making a commitment. I think this is something a good thing. For many years, I think NGO, including myself, also been fighting how to make sure company have a strong commitment. Then now, there is a company like APP making this commitment. And the challenge now is how to making sure the government official, the government people, local people, and the NGO all sitting together, how to find the solution. So I think this is something is really important. And the second thing is of course also spatial planning here is really important. And as we mentioned here, I think APP is only one thing. What we are thinking here is not only about APP, not stop in APP, but how to how to apply this for the many companies as we can, if we found this model is good enough to find a good solution with the local people. So, but the most of the key thing is the applying free, prior, and informed consent. Since the first time that the operation is start, is something is must to be done before the operation is really happening.
So we have about 15 minutes left of this session. So we just want to, panel, we should just try to keep our responses short at this point, if possible.
I really value Bapat's input, and then also what everyone said on these issues. They are very, very challenging, and I think that I just wanted to add one thing about what's happening in Semarang. Last time we talked with PPJ and some of the community representatives, was back in November, we learned that just like with APP's commitments, when you reach an agreement with the community, you're just in the beginning of a process. And so implementing those agreements, once you get there, is also going to be very challenging, and it's going to require the type of cooperation that Bustar was talking about. And I think it's between government, between local communities, civil society, and the company. So I just wanted to say that it's an achievement that there was an agreement reached, and we have a lot more work to do.
Just a short input. I think this is going to be an issue that confronts us more and more. We have now globally, outside of Indonesia, more and more companies that are buying products from Indonesia and other countries, making these no deforestation commitments, buyers of the products. So they're asking the suppliers like APP, other companies, to do these things. And I think it's coming more and more. And what we have with APP is an opportunity, with the seriousness that the company is taking on this issue, to get out there and try and grapple with these issues, with the government, with the communities, with the civil society. The traditional view has been that communities want to protect the forest and the company comes in and chops it down. Not always the case. Often the communities do want to see the land made available into a cash crop like palm or like pulp and paper plantations. Often the companies want that too, but they don't always respect the rights of the people. APP's policy and the policies of companies like GAR, the sister company, Wilmar now, who buys a lot of palm oil from Indonesia, buyers like Nestle, Neste, many other companies are asking for these things. And I think, again, what I keep coming back to is the grueling work that's ahead, but the exciting opportunity presented by companies like APP leading on saying, we want to recognise the rights of the communities and we want to protect the forest. Those two things are often in conflict. But by working together, as Bustar has mentioned, and with the involvement of the government and the communities and the NGOs, we will find a way. It might not protect all the forest because the communities may want some areas to be converted, but hopefully we'll find a balance that's a good result for the forests and the communities and Indonesia.
So Scott touched on a couple of issues here. The fact that this is an international issue, and also the role of governments here. So we do have a number of government representatives in the audience, and I'd like to give an opportunity for them to give their perspective. So specifically, I would like to invite the ambassadors of the UK and Norway to give their perspective on what's happening here. So I'll start with Your Excellency from the UK, if you're interested in saying a few things.
Yeah, thank you very much. The first thing I wanted to do was to congratulate Linda for her leadership on this. It shows what can happen when you put these things in the hands of women. I think this is such a big issue. It requires government and it requires the private sector to work together. Neither of them can solve this on their own. They need to work together. And I was very happy to be here a year ago when this initiative was launched. I'm very happy to be here again because I think it is so important. It does not It's going to take some time. It reflects the complexity on the ground, that we will have good and bad happening alongside each other. It's going to take a long time to play out. But I think it's so important for Indonesia, but I also think it's so important for the rest of the world, because increasingly companies like APP are starting to go into Africa, into other parts of the world, into Liberia, for example. And if you can get your practices right, if you can make them sustainable, you become ambassadors for sustainability. So you can help your own country, but you can also help places like Africa. So well done, keep it up. I'm very glad to be here to show that we are behind you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency from Norway, are you say something?
Yes, as Karen said, first of all, Selamat ulang tahun, happy birthday, congratulations on your policies and your celebration. Well done. We usually say sometimes that it's easy to put a plan together. The problem is afterwards to remember where you put it. So I think the important point, this is not only about the policy as such, it's about the implementation. I think that is where you have got some traction, that you have shown that there is a willingness to address problems as they arise, that there is openness. I hear panel have varying degrees of satisfaction about that, but there is openness to outside review, with a track record of implementation. So well done on that. I think, as Mark alluded to, in a way you're playing in the World Championship of sustainability in this. This is not only about being best there, it's about showing the way for private sector. I think you're doing an important job in that. I agree to all of Aida's points about what is important, but I'd like to touch on one of them. And that is market recognition. I guess you meant that broadly, but I think one important point about market recognition is also the financial markets. One interesting development last week was that one of Northern Europe's biggest institutional investors decided to divest in a lot of palm oil companies to keep one of the sister companies going. So I think that is something you'll see increasingly, that big institutional investors will choose to go with those who are sustainable, because probably they regard the risk of not doing it as bigger. So it's unsustainable to invest in unsustainable companies. But I'd like to hear, I'll maybe ask two questions if you gave me the microphone. One is for Aida. To what extent do you see that you're getting recognition from the financial markets already, if any? And when you say market recognition, that is an important issue, what do you think are the important developments that you would like to see? Then, maybe specifically to civil society representatives. One thing are conflicts, that I believe also is a very important issue. Conflicts where you have a real conflict in terms of traditional rights versus some right given through a license. The other is the issue where you have encroachment on national parks or on conservation areas, where the encroachers do not really have any traditional rights in the usual meaning of the word. How should these issues be addressed? Thank you.
I'd just like to add that the ambassador had an excellent op-ed today on these issues in the Jakarta Post.
Yes, for the financial institutions. Yeah, recognition from the financial institutions has been very, very good. We had issues in the past, possibly about a year ago, because Greenpeace was very dedicated in launching reports after reports every month. And since they stopped doing that, then last September they released a report commending our ECP implementation. These decision makers in financial institutions look at that as a really good improvement on the sustainability requirement that they ask us to comply. But just touching on the financial institutions, I think, yes, I did say about market, but I think both market and financial institutions need to develop a certain standard on sustainability. We don't want one financial institutions or other markets in other regions develop their different standards for sustainability. So if we all can get together and work together to develop the certain standard that is implemented for everybody, not just APP, not just companies in developing countries, but also implemented to all natural resource-based companies all over the world, that would be an ideal situation. Thanks.
So we only have about 5 minutes left of this session, so we're quickly running out of time. I'd like to follow up though on this market question. So major customers haven't quite started coming back yet to APP, and so my question for the panel here is, what needs to happen in order for customers to come back? What's really appropriate for that? So I guess I'll start with Lafcadio. What would it take for you to say it's okay for customers to come back to APP, given that you're still campaigning?
We don't endorse or endorse companies for buying, really. But I mean, what we recommend. What are the conditions under which they should consider it? And I think that we're really committed to with APP, given the track record that's been mentioned. We think that commitment is not compliance, so we need to see verification. And so we really are waiting for the results of the independent verification. And I think that without having those results, and given the perhaps hundreds of land conflicts that may be in APP's concession, given the fact that management plans have not been developed and agreed with stakeholders for moving forward, and we haven't seen the implementation of those plans yet, that it's really too soon until we have verification on those issues to tell. So yeah, I think that that's kind of the threshold that we're looking at, and what I will say is that there's been a lot of progress. I was very impressed by Dewi's presentation and just how much progress the company has made in setting up the systems and starting to collect the data, in putting the pieces in place that's going to be required. But I think that we need to see actual implementation, which we haven't seen yet. It's just the pieces are in place. And so that's our position. And I agree with Aida, who earlier said, when companies do go in, they should set performance requirements for the company to keep motivation. In Rand's experience, though, it's more of a motivation for companies to implement their commitments when those contracts haven't come back, rather than when they do. We've seen implementation slow down with several companies. So I think that's a lesson of how our criticism and our talking with the marketplace, we see ourselves as helping towards a solution and maintaining a pressure for implementation of the commitments.
Dido?
Civil society, NGOs, RAND, Greenpeace, EPN developed what was called the EPN milestones, which define the things that ideally we want to see happening. And in those milestones, among them I think are starting to be adopted by APP. One is about that independent verification. The other, I think your statement today was something that was a nice surprise for me. That openly you're saying that about the context of the conservation and restoration. I think what we need to do is spell that out more clearly. But again, I think it is a work in progress, because there are still some things that for us is still worrying. I think one is about the HCVF and HCS. The HCVF has not been shared with civil society, so until now we don't really know what the quality of that work is. We are very interested to give positive inputs on those applications, but the absence of that information leaves us in a big question mark, because it's actually a core part of your FCP. So I think that our position with RAN is the same in this, is that we need to see these implementations, and that the independent verification is also a key way to address this.
So on the transparency front, there was one question that came up from Greenomix, and it was just, in the past, APP wasn't always clear what companies APP owned or who supplied APP. So the question is what assurances can APP provide that those days are in the past, and that you will be transparent about the companies that supply you and the companies that you own?
I think that
sorry, that was directed to Aida. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's not really.
Sorry.
But you're free to answer that.
Okay. Can I just very quickly? Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's sorry. Because it's related. Yeah. It's about the context of us still being not 100% sure. And today I think there was a report that was released by Greenomix about 5 concessions that were independent, were not part of the 38 concessions, and these things needs to be clarified, because it goes to the core of good faith in the context of the transparency. What are these status? Because in the FCP, the status of independent suppliers or directly owned companies is important, because that's where you have that differentiation of what to do. So that's something that needs to be clarified, and part of the reason why we're still speculative. Sorry for taking your...
It's okay, Dido, I'm used to it. To address 2 questions. Number one is about, I just want to say something about, a lot of people today saying that APP's intention is good, APP's policy is on paper, but we have yet to see the implementation on the ground. That upsets me, because we have worked very, very, very hard in the last 2 years to try to make sure that deforestation activity stopped. A natural forest moratorium remains very, very effective. There is no conversion that has been done by our suppliers. To maintain zero deforestation in our supply chain is not easy. You have heard before about social conflicts, encroachment, and et cetera, et cetera. To maintain zero deforestation in our supply chain, that's a lot of hell of work already been done. So that's already a very strong evidence that the core of the implementation of the forest conservation policy has been implemented and hopefully continues to be upheld. Regarding where was it? Yeah, the report from Greenomix. Transparency is basically a must. There are other NGOs calling APP's transparency as a radical transparency. No other companies in the world who posted the list of their suppliers and the maps of their suppliers on the website for everybody to see. But regarding the ownership and transparency of the ownership, it's going to be part of the scope that will be evaluated by Rainforest Alliance. Rainforest Alliance is here. Maybe they can clarify a little bit more, because Rainforest Alliance is a totally independent organization. So the type of evaluation that they're going to conduct is totally up to them. We have no rights to dictate them. But the other approach that we use is also in the dialogue that we are doing with FSC, the transparency and also ownership that which has been reported by Greenbury this morning, which will also be audited by FSC team. I'm sure FSC will have a certain requirement for transparency to inform all interested stakeholders with the development as well. Thanks.
Okay, so one last question before we go to the audience here. And that is, this is actually a question from the World Economic Forum. And the question is can APP's business model change, and is its roadmap and the forest conservation policy a potential model for other businesses? And how would that fit into something like the Tropical Forest Alliance in terms of moving towards zero deforestation, sort of industry-wide? So that's a question, just open question for the panel.
Yeah, I've been engaged with the campaign in the last couple of years, and then I think the first company who's making no deforestation commitment is Golden Agri Resource in the 2011. Before that, we've been doing a lot of hard campaign and then talking with the company, and then every single company that we meet, they're saying, what you're asking Greenpeace is impossible, it's insane. And, it's especially in the case of Indonesia. And then after that, suddenly in the 2011, Golden Agri saying, we will produce no deforestation palm oil with doing HCS, HCVF, no peatland, and so on. And several years after that, APPs come on board also, no deforestation. So means this is the proof that no deforestation product is something possible for the country like Indonesia. And means also what is happening now with Golden Agri and APP, and recently Wilmar also making a commitment, as Mr. Ambassador saying, this is something that we can learn how to applying this also in the other country like Africa, where is the all palm oil now moving there. So I think we should be proud. This is start from Indonesia, where is the lot of problem that we face, but we're trying to do something, to create something, to making sure the environmental issue is there, the forest is being protected, community right is also protected, but also in the same times, business also can still grow. So I think what I'm saying is, yes, this is something possible to apply to the wider context anywhere, especially in the developing countries like Indonesia.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. I mean, this goes far beyond just business. During our assessments, we're visiting landscapes which are verging on critical. There are movements towards sustainability, but if other businesses and other stakeholders in the landscape don't work together, we're going to see a general degradation. A good example is when one company occupies just a portion of a peat dome. If other players within that peat dome don't have a similar management, then the management within one hydrological unit is futile. You can slow the inevitable. You can slow down degradation. But I mean, with the extending or the expanding pressure on some of these landscapes and climate change, it's what we're seeing is landscapes being driven to the point of collapse, losing their diversity, losing their productivity, and ultimately leading to poverty in Indonesia. So APP has taken a bold step. That's why Ekologika is helping them with recommendations for HCV, trying to develop sustainable landscapes, which ultimately is good for business for them, hopefully, and for other players in that landscape. But everybody needs to work together here. So I think this is a good model. Yes, it's not perfect. We're working on it. through stakeholder input, I think this is vital, and I encourage other big business, other stakeholders, government, NGOs to provide inputs, constructive inputs that we can help push the process forward. Thanks.
Just quick on this issue. I sat in the room a year ago when Aida and Pak Teguh Wijaya were making the announcement. And while everyone else was clapping and cheering, I find myself sitting here thinking, okay, what are we going to do next? This is really something special. And of course, I was mindful of the implementation challenge that lay ahead, but I was also mindful of what other opportunities could arise. 10 months later to the day, Wilmar made their announcement. Wilmar is the world's largest palm oil company, trading 45% of the world's palm oil, but it buys from probably about 80% of the world's palm oil companies. They have a huge challenge ahead. If we think APP's challenge is big, Wilmar's is another level up. However, they've embraced the challenge, and part of the courage they had to do so was because they knew APP and Golden Agri Resources were embarking on a similar challenge. So I think it is coming. I think the discussion at Davos was very interesting this year, and I believe that more and more companies are looking at this saying, we want that. And not only do we want it, we want to reward the companies. This comes back to market recognition. We want to reward the companies out in these places who are grappling with these very, very tough issues that we've discussed on the panel. We want to reward them by buying their products and giving them some encouragement. That was an outcome of the Davos meeting, and I think that's where it's going to go. More of these buyers of products will be encouraging the producers to follow the lead of GAR, APP, and now Wilmar.
So I think it's time to open up to the floor to questions. So don't be shy. The panel's ready for the hard questions. So.
Thank you. My name is Sergio Baffoni from the Environmental Paper Network. I'm pleased to see that restoration will be a key element in the policy. I just would like to ask, it may be difficult to restore all environmental values that has been impacted in its own time. So I would like to know if the company is ready to have a wider approach to integrate conservation, restoration, and compensation into a landscape planning vision, not only at the unit level.
The answer to that is yes, it's part of the plan. So first we need to finalize our high conservation value and high carbon stock assessment to identify where the natural forest is located. And then we're going to have a look at the landscape level to prioritize which area which might require certain management, either in restorations or any other high conservation value enhancement activities. And yes, we have also been thinking of supporting other natural forest concessions next to our concessions as well. But the very key issues here is that there's no such standard has been developed to calculate this. We need to have a proper mechanism of calculation on what kind of restoration that can be done. RSPO has a draft, but still very early. We need to define what kind of coefficient that need to be implemented. We need to define what is the definition of natural forest being deforested. So we are very, very happy that NGOs, part of Environmental Paper Network, is willing to work with us to define this later on. Thanks.
Next question.
My name is Marcus Colchester from the Forest People's Programme. We can hear some really good things in this meeting, but we've also noted how very challenging it is to make this all work. We're trying to reconcile massive fibre supply with high conservation values, which is a pretty new methodology, with high carbon stock identification, which is very new. And at the same time, we're trying to make sure the livelihoods of the local communities are accommodated. And we know that there are hundreds of communities within these concessions. And so far, which is great, the company has engaged to resolve conflicts with a few of them, 2 or 3. And we've heard that, yes, there are possibilities of providing secure tenure for those communities. And I don't think we've really drilled down enough on that issue yet. If we're going to have sustainability in the landscape, like Neville was saying, we've got to provide better security for the communities in the long term, so that they have a long-term vision and a hope themselves for managing their lands, rather than just making short-term gains because they're insecure. So my question is really, how do we scale this up as a multi-stakeholder group? We all of us, we're on this lack of capacity to get there with what we've got today. So my question is, how do we really get there to make sure communities are part of the solution, not as they've been portrayed today, part of the problem?
I actually would like to invite one of the member of the Forest Trust, our social expert, Mr. Agung, to help us. What do you think to help us, secure the needs of the community in not only in our concessions but in Indonesia in general?
Thank you for the question, Marcus. So far, what we try to implement in this 30H concession is that we try to, of course, for the first time, we try to improve the policy itself, and then through this policy, we develop a new procedure that will guide those managerial and operational staff to do a new approach in solving the conflict and securing the livelihood of those local people that living within and around the concessions. So far, what we've been doing is that we try to provide training on the free prior income concerns. You also aware that this is something, even though traditionally in Indonesia we have what we call musyawarah, but most of the musyawarah rely on the verbal consensus and commitment. We trust on that. But then when we introduce this, what so-called free prior consent that also strengthen that process, which require more on the documentation also. So we try to improve the capacity of those operational and managerial staff and manager on the ground by providing training. So on this 38 concessions, on the September last year, has been completed the conflict mapping, so that we already identify where are the conflict between those company with the local community, whether they're living in the concession or nearby the concessions. So we stratify that conflict already, and we try to grouping into what we call Pak Hadi from Ministry of Forestry mentioned about the many types of conflict. If the local community already living there prior to the existence of the local community, that will be one group. And some other group that we already classify those conflicts. Then we will conduct the consultation with local community as well as the local government and Ministry of Forestry. How are we going to address those conflicts that exist, that has been mapped and identified? So in that sense, by incorporating also the new procedure on free prior income consent, we want to make sure that the past mistake on this relation between local community and the company will not happening again on the new development of plantations. So on the new development plantations, all concessions should apply this procedure, meaning that they have to securing and respecting the right of local community to the prior information consents. I know this is a big challenge for APP also and also for us. That's why we try to engage local NGO also to help us in trying to solve a number of conflicts that we set as learning sites, as well as we are thinking about developing the institution that can support later on the capacity building of this around issue of conflict resolution, free prior and consent and local community livelihood. The FT has been talking to many organizations in trying to have the same understanding in developing what we call it Central for Social Excellence in Indonesia, which mainly to be an institution that will provide capacity building, collaboratively working with the university with the NGO, to develop a model and strategy how to help these businesses, because the conflict is everywhere, not only in these 38 concessions, in the mining sector, in the agriculture sector, in the plantations. So because this is very wide range of a conflict, we have to really think strategically on this. Thank you. That's my response.
Thank you. Laf, respond.
Well, I just give one thing that some of groups that RAN works with, local NGOs, including WBH, Scale Up, Forest Peoples Program, PPJ, and several others. We're starting to have a bit of we're trying to develop a monitoring network to look at these social issues, and also a skill sharing network to actually learn from cases in Reading, cases in Senyarang, cases in Datu Raju Melayu, and so to exchange experience about how that's going, and hopefully through that experience start to build skills. And I think that's one way to start scaling it up, that RAN and most importantly our Indonesian colleagues are starting to up the game in that respect. So I think that's hopeful, but there's a long way to go.
I would like to add something from what Marcus said. We definitely do not see community as part of our problems. We see them as one of our key stakeholders to help us support the successful implementation of the integrated sustainable forest management that we're planning to do. Just to clarify.
More questions?
Yeah, it's Paul Joseph from Chesapeake. We're packaging suppliers of one of the customers. Some really good things have come out today. Three main things for me. One is senior management commitment from APP. I think it's fantastic. Commitment to openness and independent review is really essential from my perspective as a buyer. But also the collaboration with people like Greenpeace. So my question really is for the panel, but also for Greenpeace specifically. From a buyer of egg-based products, what should we be considering as far as our due diligence?
Well, I think in our review, we strongly says that yes, you can start talk with APP, but also really looking at what is happening on the ground. I mean, rather than hear from us, better you going directly to see is APP really implement their policy on the ground. So I think this is something is really important. And the secondly, of course, also about the management plan of APP, because this is something that APP has been doing now, developing the management plan after doing what you call it, all survey of the HCVF, free, prior, and informed consent, and high carbon stock, and peatland. But management plan will tell you what APP will do next. So I think this is something that important that you need to know, to making sure that there is assurance when you start to engage with APP, then APP will keep continue the good thing that what they're already doing in the past year.
From our perspective, I think we've mentioned this several times, is that the key is for that independent verification that APP right now is starting to embark. And also, what's more technical on that is actually what the indicators and how performance will be judged. So that is very important, because we feel that it will be difficult for companies or to judge by themselves without these experts independently verifying for them. So that is where our concerns lie, and that's where we still say until now that for buyers, you should wait for this independent verification. The process is already in place, and we are very supportive that APP has agreed to adopt this, and I think it will go a long way in the context of informing its potential buyers and investors.
Just to add a little bit for Chesapeake, yes, agree with Dido and also Lafcadio that independent evaluation by Rainforest Alliance is key and very important. But we must not forget that APP has established several platforms to involve many stakeholders to independently monitor our progress as well. In addition to TFT, we also invite WWF and also Greenpeace to also independently monitor our implementation. And then as a buyer, just have a look at Greenpeace's latest report in September to make decision.
Just to maybe build on what Ida said, I would say as a buyer, there are many platforms. There's the dashboard, there's the upcoming independent monitoring. It's been suggested that TFT is not particularly independent because APP pays us to do the work, but it's never been a problem when we've done work with other companies. Apparently it's a problem now. But we would happily advise you honestly what we think the company's doing. And I'd also ask you to look at the other people who you might buy from and ask, are they having Rainforest Alliance come in and do an independent evaluation of them? Have they got a dashboard being open about their thing, their implementation of their policy? Are they trying to work with NGOs and local communities and grappling with tough situations? Do they have a forest conservation policy that's equal to APP's? So I would say you can do a lot of your own due diligence by also comparing where APP is with their competitors. And I think one of the issues that I would raise with Lafcadio and Dido is the need to be consistent in what they ask APP to do. We can tie the company up in circles for the next 10 years, and what they ask other companies to do. And I think there needs to be an urgent look at the consistency. The European paper network that Sergio heads has put together some milestones. When they came out, we thought positive document and useful. How does the rest of the world, including in North America and in Europe, stack up against those milestones? I don't say APP hits them all at the moment. I don't see APP hits them all at the moment, but I can tell you that there's a firm commitment to meet them and have dialogue with Sergio and his team and the NGOs to understand how we can do it. So I applaud the transparency and openness that APP is taking. I wonder if their competitors in the market are doing the same thing. And you could probably judge that better than me.
So I just usually agree with Scott and find myself agreeing again in this respect that I think that the performance milestones that we've set out, we are committed to applying those to across the board, whether it's North America, whether it's South America, whether it's Africa, or whether it's the Asia Pacific. So that's certainly our intention, and when we developed those, we actually talked about, and thanks to Bustar and his team's input, and Dido and his team's input, and Sergio and their input, that was one of our benchmarks is, okay, are we going to apply this across the board? So that's fully our intention, and that might be another useful tool in kind of just having a checklist of what kind of things are we looking for, are the environmental and social rights community looking for in terms of performance of companies, not only APP, but April and North American companies like International Paper and Kimberly-Clark.
So we have time for 2 more questions, and then we're going to come back to the panel for a final question.
I have a question for Aida. I'm Paul Rycroft, the Executive Director of Kemp. We're an international NGO, and we currently work with just over 700 major customers of the global pulp and paper industry. And we've been tracking your work for quite some time, obviously following your forest commitment with significant interest. And I think all of us in this room are quite aware that change management can be really challenging with an initiative of this scale and this scope. And I think your colleagues did a great job in highlighting some of the successes that you've had over the last year. And I'm cognizant of the fact that sometimes it's where we fall short of our goals that we find the most interesting lessons. And so I'm hoping that you'd be willing to share 2 or 3 of the most spectacular failures of the last year. And what the lessons are that you've learned from that, what you're going to be taking through into your second year.
How do I start? Spectacular failures. The first spectacular failure that happened to our forest conservation policy was that it happened a couple of months after we launched our policy, that we realized that our procedures needed a lot of improvement. At that time, I think it was WWF who revealed to us that there's some conversion happening in community forest, and that it was not recorded properly, it was not assessed properly by our joint team between APP and TFT. And as a result, we learned from it and improve our procedure to ensure that it will not happen again. Second spectacular failure is the lack of mapping. When we launched our policy in February 2013, we didn't have much time to collect all information required by our suppliers. It was the decision and also the socializing. Our decision was done in a very short time, probably about 3 to 6 months, to all our suppliers. So we didn't have time to collect all information on what is actually happening in each concession. So again, it was also reported by an NGO that there is an issue with the overlapping concession. Again, based on that, we learned from it and we improve our policy. Now we finished the mapping of the overlapping licenses and overlapping land uses across our supply chain. Identify them and start talking to the local government and also central government and also all of these companies on how to resolve the issues. Thank you.
One more question?
My name is Ika. I'm from Dido.com. I'm from India. First of all, I think I have to apologize first to Ms. Aida because I have to make the video upset. I need to clarify some rumors, unpleasant rumors. As we all know, Greenpeace and APP used to be were enemy, and when finally both of you decided to really hatch up and work on this policy, inevitably there is unpleasant rumors spread, especially on the internet about actually the process is not transparent at all, or some secret fund from APP to all the NGOs, and this is your opportunity to clarify that rumors, and what is all your reaction about these rumors? Thank you.
Thank you. Don't worry, I'm not upset. It's very hard to make me upset. We have a very strong grievance procedure for all these claims. So unfortunately, we have yet to hear this complaint. So if anybody makes such complaint or hear anything about this, please feel free to submit it to our grievance process or system, and we will look at it as well. And if there is any evidence, again, you know, we're very transparent. If there is any additional evaluation need to be done, then we are very open. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Bustar, you can help clarify this. I don't recall I ever give you any money at all.
Yeah, when I hear this, and then my mind is flying to Papua in Raja Ampat, sitting in the beach, you know, lay down, because a lot of money already. But you know, I'm still here. Well, it's not rumor. It's there. I mean, people saying that openly. So it's not secret. People saying that openly everywhere. So I'm proud to say that Greenpeace is supported by 30,000 Indonesian people to run the operation here in Indonesia. So we get our money from the normal people who's walking on the street, who went to the university, in the middle level class in Indonesia, who donate to us 100,000 rupiah a month for 1 year contract. So that is our money is coming from, and some support from the some Greenpeace office, from from the like U.S. office, from Greenpeace International, which is Greenpeace policy is not receiving money from the company and the government, and then globally we have like 3 million people who supporting us, donate to us, and we have people on the street who asking for support here also in Indonesia. So in Indonesia we have 30,000 people who support us in the day-to-day basis in our operation. So that is our money is coming from. And then Yeah, I mean, and our audit report is on public, is in our website. You can see it, you can access that, and because this kind of question is not the first time it's come to us, which is maybe some people is surprised after Greenpeace doing action and now working together with the company. I think I mentioned this earlier that in this collaboration, I call it collaboration. No any single paper signed by Greenpeace, none. No any single paper. And even that usually in the company they sign what they call it NDA, right? Non-disclosure agreement. And Greenpeace not signed any non-disclosure agreement when we did the collaboration. We all built this on trust. When APP share to us information, that because APP share that with trust to us. And same also when we tell APP, yes, we give you some times to implement this with stop campaign, that's also with trust. And we apply that. No campaign is happening while APP is implement this. So I will assure you there is no money involved on this. And our support is coming from our 30,000 supporters, Indonesian people, to support our operation here in Indonesia.
Well, thank you for your questions. I'm sorry we don't have time for more. I want to return to the panel for one final question and get everyone's response. So the question is, in your view, what needs to happen in coming months to ensure that forests and communities in Indonesia are better protected a year from now than they are today? And what role does APP's FCP play in that effort? And the last part of that question is, what is your organization's role in contributing to that end?
Well, I think the challenge in the coming months ahead, the key challenge is, well, obviously just to continue the work that's ongoing. There's, in Dewi and Elim's presentation, you saw the amount of work that's going on. So we've got to continue that, because I think it's not just APP that will be measured by the delivery of the policy, but there's a lot of companies looking at this and saying, can anyone deliver this policy? So we talked about the uptake of these no deforestation policies more globally. So the success in that, which I think we all want, lives or dies on the basis of whether APP and GAR particularly, and also Wilma, who are implementing these things, can deliver. So I think we've just got to keep focused on that. But I think the key issue has been raised, and it's come very forcibly to our attention, really. I think we've been long focused on the forest. Marcus Colchester has raised the point about the role of the communities. The HCS has thrown this into stark light for us, that we have to do a better job of trying to reconcile this community desires for their customary lands and the need to conserve forest. This is a conflict that has hit us in the face, I think, in the last few months as we've embarked on the forest conservation policy. So I think that's the key focus. How to solve it is really to work together, because no single organisation has the answer. I think Marcus has done a lot of this work and he's got some good experience. Agung has mentioned some of our work. APP has relationship with these communities. Ryan has got good relationships, I know, with a lot of the local NGOs, WWF too. This is a problem we need to solve, because if we don't solve it, the risk is it'll just degenerate into further conflict and there'll be unhappiness and grief, and everyone will say, yeah, that no deforestation thing didn't work. And I think that would be a tragedy for the world, because it is going into Africa. Palm oil companies are going into Africa. This applies in Latin America. This applies in my country, Australia. This is a critical moment for the world to come to grips with deforestation. And our role, TFT's role in it, is to try and help that delivery. Get out in the forest, get out in the field, get out in the plantations, get out in the communities and the factories and work with people and try and bring people into that middle ground. We like to say that I think we can be very clear that the Greenpeace and WWF and RAND campaigns have been a critical ingredient in bringing APP to this place. But having made the commitment, I think the time of the sword is over. Put the sword down and get together and solve the problems, because this is an opportunity that's never been presented to the world before to try and deal with this issue of deforestation and the community conflict that Marcus has raised. Put the sword down. Doesn't mean you've got to go endorsing them and encouraging everyone to come buying for them, because that's your business. But get together and have a genuine, real commitment in a room and out in the field, out in the forest, out in the village houses to solve that particular issue. Because if we solve that, we unlock the whole path to no deforestation for the global community, not just Indonesia. And that's the prize that awaits us. And TFT will be focusing on the overall delivery of the FCP, but we'll be putting renewed emphasis on trying to solve that particular problem in the coming 12 months.
But I'm actually going to echo something, because I think the challenge will be, can we, working together with Wilmar, GAR, APP, kickstart something bigger in the nation. And I think that's really, that's going to be a real challenge over the next year. There's going to be a lot of challenges with the details of implementing the FCP, with the details of figuring out those management plans, of doing landscape restoration. But I think how do we use this to transform, to build on what you were saying, how do we use this to transform through APP's leadership, through these other companies' leadership, how government is looking at this problem, how civil society is looking at this set of problems, and I agree, work together and take our different roles to actually move the ball down the field. And I believe it is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I think what, again, as I'm saying earlier, a couple of years ago, people saying this is impossible. Now it's possible. So if there's any company who involved in the natural resources based sector, if you saying that no deforestation product is impossible, I think we have the proof. I mean, we have Golden Agri, we have APP now, we have Wilmar can commit on that. So I think there is no more excuse to say that no deforestation is impossible. Same also for the market. I mean, your choice to decide you want to go to buying product involved in the deforestation, and maybe our activists will come to your store, or start supporting a company who doing real to stop deforestation. And I think as Laf and Scott mentioned, I think working together is important. I think the role of the government is really key here, not only company and civil society and the community, because we have a government, in the case of Indonesia, we have election this year, and we should support the government and stop taking, I mean, especially from the company who operate on the ground, stop taking any advantage and benefit from the lack of the governance that we have in Indonesia. We should support our government to be strong, to do law enforcement, to support for the achievement of the zero deforestation.
Our work in Indonesia, I think, is very broad. Yeah, corporate engagement, like the ones in the context of APP, is among an important part of that. And as mentioned from the very beginning, we are cautiously welcoming the commitments that APP has made. Yes, cautiously welcoming. In that context, we see that there is opportunity. The opportunity to turn the leaf. Now, in that sense, we're at the position where, you know, hopefully things will get better. And it's in Indonesia, I think it's important. The private sector is an important player, and if the private sector with the government can work in the unity in pushing those policies forward, I think there is much chance and better hope. So in our work, we also work on the context of spatial planning. We also work on the context of law enforcement. There are now rays of light. You know, there is now that the KPK is out there, which I think will bring a benefit to us in the context of working on the natural resource, because corruption is one area that completely screws everything up. It doesn't build that level playing field. And because that there is still that corruption, other players can do rotten stuff. And that's where I think civil society and the market strength can transcend all that and be a force to try to make that change. So I'm leaving this meeting feeling hopeful, and that a big part or a piece of the puzzle is moving in the right direction. So I think that's would be my comment for that.
I think I just echo what you guys have already said. I mean, we're left with the challenge over the next 5 months of 5 to 6 months of wrapping up the assessments that are already underway. That's relatively easy, in inverted commas. It takes a lot of effort, but the real challenge ahead is how to integrate the recommendations from that into management, and importantly for monitoring.
So Aida, I'm going to give you a final word. What have you taken away from this debate?
That cross-sector collaboration is key for the future of Indonesia's forest. GAR, Wilmar, APP are not enough. So we have to urge other companies to implement the real zero deforestation, which means stop conversion now, not in the next year, not in the next 5 years, not in 2020. And then also agree with Bustar that the government policy, the government needs to help to resolve land tenure and special planning problems. NGOs need to continue to attack companies which are not responsible and not attacking companies who are trying to reborn Lafcadio. I think that's all from me.
Great. Well, thank you. So thanks again for participating. I thought this was a really excellent debate. So now, Dido, Aida, Scott, Lafcadio, thanks again. So with the conclusion of this, well, first I just want to say it's a surprisingly civil debate. I was expecting more bloodshed, but I thought it went really well. So thanks again. Right, exactly. Thanks again. So with the conclusion of the panel discussion, we're at the end of the event today. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending.